Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast. Today, at long last, the Wheel of Time turns and ages come and pass. That's right, we're finally getting started. Welcome to episode 27, the first episode of our Wheel of Time read-through, beginning, of course, with the first half of The Eye of the World. I am your host, Rob Santos, joined, as always, by my co-host and lifelong friend, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
Making another return as special guest, Drew's wife, Lauren McCaffrey.
Hey, everybody.
And to top it off, where would we be without our overlord of sound, Mr. Patrick McCaffrey? What's up, dude?
Hey, guys. I know you've all missed me terribly.
So much. I think it's been since the Acts of Cain since we've had you on, hasn't it?
That's right. And God, am I glad to be doing something not quite as depressing.
Yeah. Oh, my God. We've been waiting so long to do this. And, up to this moment, we've had... And I calculated this very hastily just before we started. Something like 36 weeks since we recorded the first episode of the podcast. And, I would be lying if I said we weren't absolutely heading here from day one. Like the Wheel of Time holds this special place, specifically for Drew and I, because not only is it the entire reason that we became friends in the first place, but also because of, who it shaped us to be both as avid readers and hopeful writers. I can absolutely say if it weren't for the Wheel of Time, this podcast wouldn't be happening right now. So I figure it's only proper that we each describe, how we came to find the Wheel of Time, how we discovered it, what our first experiences with it were like. And Drew, I'll pass it off to you first, man. How did you find the Wheel of Time?
Yeah, so I was 11. This was back in like the spring of 2002. I was just about to turn 12, and I was kind of obsessed with the Star Wars Expanded Universe at this point, and my parents were just desperate to get me to read anything other than, the same 20 Star Wars books over and over again. And it was right around that time that From the Two Rivers and To the Blight were released, which are the YA split version of Eye of the World. And they kind of stuffed it into my hands and said, "You're going to read this." And little did they know the monster they were creating, right? It took me a little while to get into it, but once I hit Winter Night, I blazed through up to that point Winter's Heart, which was all that was published, and I never looked back. The Wheel of Time has, like, in so many ways dominated my life. I've read these books upwards of 35 times. I'm very active in a lot of forums online. I was on Wattmania and Read and Find Out and Dragon Mount, and now I'm a moderator for the big Wheel of Time Facebook group with 17 or 18,000 members in it now. And
it's a big group. I
go to JordanCon every year. I'm a panelist at JordanCon. The Wheel of Time as a series has shaped my life in so many ways. I'm a beta reader for Brandon Sanderson, and I wouldn't be that if I hadn't gotten into the Wheel of Time. I write for Tor.com now, and I wouldn't be doing that if I hadn't discovered the Wheel of Time. I've written 3 novels, working on a 4th. I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't read the Wheel of Time. It's crazy how much this series has shaped my life. So I am thrilled to finally be getting back into this. And this is the other thing. I've read these books dozens of times, but I haven't touched this series since 2015. It's been going on 4.5 years since I read The Eye of the World, and
that long, eh?
And that was that 2015 read. I only got up through book 4 before writing my own book kind of took over my life, and so most of the Wheel of Time I haven't touched since 2013, since After a Memory of Light came out, when I did a reread. So yeah, this is making me giddy here.
I know. I've been every day coming up to this point just thinking about it this is kind of the entire reason we started this podcast, so we could discuss something of this caliber. I'm so excited that we're actually here.
Yeah.
Pat, what about you, dude?
Well, Drew got me into the Wheel of Time primarily. It was at your sister's wedding. We were off hanging out most of the time because we were about the only people in that age group, and you were on fire about how awesome the Wheel of Time is. And you ended up telling me a lot of stuff that I thought just sounded really, really cool. Fortunately, I forgot most of it by the time I crossed it in the books.
Right, yeah.
So I got started on the Eye of the World, and it kind of... I wasn't a big reader at the time, so it kind of took me a while to really get going at a good pace.
Right.
But I love the series, and as far as fuel for the imagination goes, there's few series that are better. Because the world building is just so nice.
Oh, it's so good.
You can experience the books, and then, on your own initiative, think about all of these things that could happen in this universe, all of the things you could do with it. The Wheel of Time show's coming out, and that's just one example.
Yeah.
I have to express some surprise that I was the one who introduced it, because I know your father, my uncle, and as well as a couple of your siblings read The Wheel of Time before I did.
That's true, and I'd heard of it already, but it was only when you were explaining like some of the things and how awesome it was that it just caught my imagination.
Yeah. One could argue that it was when you saw somebody so close to your own age and someone you were so similar to glowing about it that you thought, okay, this could be something that I could really dive into and lose myself in.
Well, and it was the details, really.
Yeah?
The description of some events that previous to that point I'd not conceived of anything like that in a book. And at this point, that we're all well-versed fantasy readers, it seems kind of cliche, a lot of the things in The Wheel of Time. But at the time, it was quite the opposite experience.
Yeah, I have whole points about this that I want to get to later. And throughout the entirety of our Wheel of Time podcast. What are you guys drinking there? What is giving you this face?
Oh, we'll get to that.
I'm sorry, behind the scenes here in the in the webcam, I'm looking at these three. They're just kind of passing off this kind of mysterious, dark-looking liquid that's making them all look like they just...
It was pure joy on my face, Rob. Pure joy.
We'll get to that in the final
joy?
draft.
Awesome. Okay. So, Lauren, do I even need to ask how you discovered the Wheel of Time?
Surprise, surprise, it was Drew.
Just as I figured.
When we started dating, he gave me Mistborn for my birthday. And then after I finished Mistborn, I think is when you started pushing me to read The Wheel of Time. Took me a while.
Yeah, when I was sure you would enjoy it, that's when... And when I was sure we were in this thing for the long haul, because,
Yeah, The Wheel of Time is not a casual relationship kind of series.
No, totally not.
It's not something to start lightly. It is a commitment in and of itself. The Wheel of Time is just... it's The Wheel of Time. There's really nothing else you can compare it to nowadays, is there?
Yeah,
No.
and now I'm on my 5th reread. I think we're on 5.
Yeah, you've pretty regularly just recycled as soon as you finish a run through it. You turn around pretty quickly and start listening again or start reading again.
Well, because I don't have time.
I know the
It
feeling.
takes so long to get through them all.
Yeah, but that's the joy of starting out where we are starting out. Like, some people complain that the series is too long, but for me as someone who loves it, it's just more to love.
Yeah.
And you imagine this journey that you know the steps of the journey, but you're excited to revisit them once again.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
each
cannot
time
agree
you
more.
read this series, it takes on a slightly different aspect in your imagination. At least it does for me.
Yeah. So, Rob, what about you?
Well, Drew... you definitely know. I'm going to tell everybody now, mine and Drew's stories, with our beginnings in the Wheel of Time are very, very similar. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because check this out. It was actually my mother who got me into the Wheel of Time when I was also 11 years old. And as a kid, from 1st grade through 7th grade, I was reading one thing and one thing only. That was Harry Potter. And I was the kid waiting in full Harry Potter cosplay at the midnight release for every book, at the one bookshop that we had in my hometown. I read those books over and over and over and over again to the point where it was probably unhealthy. And my mom, who was, of course, a big Harry Potter fan at the time, having gotten me into it in the first place, and to this day, she's still a huge reader. At some point, she also decided, okay, something's got to give. Enough is enough. And one day when I was 10, she brought home these oddly large rectangular, like paperback versions of these books called From the Two Rivers, Part 1 of the Eye of the World, The Beginning of the Wheel of Time. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's a stupid name. Like who would name their book something that long and that confusing? And I just put it back down. And I left it there, and I'm ashamed to say it, for like 8 or 9 months before picking it back up when I was 11. And this was my first, I finally got into it. I started it kind of nervously. This was my first taste of epic fantasy. At this point in my young life, I hadn't even heard of Tolkien. I started into that first book really nervously. But of course, I was hooked immediately. I was 11. This was the coolest damn thing I had ever read. And it wasn't until a year later in my school library, of all places, that I stumbled across what was the largest book I had ever seen in my 12 years of life at that point, The Great Hunt. And it's something about that name was a little familiar. I didn't quite place it. I didn't know what it was. So I read the back of the book and I saw the name Rand al'Thor, and I realized in that moment just what I was holding. I had thought of all the other books listed in the Eye of the World as just novels by the same author. I didn't realize that they were actually all part of a connected series. And I remember my reaction, just everything kind of sinking in, everything I'd been missing, and I was like, oh my god, I am so checking this out. The story goes on, I had no idea. So then, next Christmas came, I opened The Dragon Reborn, I opened The Shadow Rising under the Christmas tree, and it remains to this day one of the most excited reactions I've ever had over a gift, like ever. Like, I demanded to take a picture that morning holding those two books. And, somewhere in this house, somewhere buried so deep I hope no one ever finds it, is a picture of 12-year-old me holding The Dragon Reborn and The Shadow Rising, So, and that's pretty much how I discovered The Wheel of Time. The rest of the series went by book, like all in the space of a single year, in my 9th grade year. Of course, the wait for Knife of Dreams was getting long, so I started rereading. And when rereading wouldn't quench my thirst, I began this habit of just picking a random one before bedtime and opening to a random page. And over the course of a single week, I would be reading portions of The Dragon Reborn, and then I would be skipping to the end of Lord of Chaos, and then I would be starting Winter's Heart, and I would skip again to like the end of The Great Hunt, and I was just kind of all over the place. It was madness for a long time. But then Facebook came about. I joined the Wheel of Time Facebook page, and I started interacting in the forums when I was like 17, 18 years old. And one day, I found a picture shared in that group of two cosplayers. One was a figure in black, a certain figure from the Wheel of Time that may or may not be a spoiler to say the name of, but he was locked, I think it was blade to blade, against this other dude who was in all white, cosplaying Ellen Venture from Mistborn, I think it was. And I commented, and I don't remember what the comment was, but the rest is, of course, as they say, history, because that dude in white was none other than Mr. Drew McCaffrey here.
And you know who the dude in black was?
No, who's the dude in black?
The guy sitting right next to me.
What?
Yeah.
What? Pat, that was you?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that was a Halloween party.
What?
Yeah, no kidding.
My damn mind. Holy crap.
I can't believe you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. Holy shit. I'm just finding that out now.
Isn't that amazing?
Holy crap. That is incredible. That's basically how I started the Wheel of Time. And as Drew and I became good friends, we started to shoot theories at each other back and forth. We were rereading, in time for The Gathering Storm, Towers of Midnight, the last book, A Memory of Light, and we started really discussing Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. We discovered that we both liked the exact same bands, the same video games, and then one day last year, one of us went, hey, we should start a podcast. And that's basically how we arrived here today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. That's mine.
It's fitting that we take this trip down memory lane as we
I can't believe that was you, dude.
Is so infused with nostalgia and happy memories for all of us.
Well, and memory and myth and legend as themes as well.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to start quoting there.
I could.
As we go through the series, I expect that we'll be telling stories that are germane to the particular books as they happened in our lives.
Oh,
and I can't wait to tell some of those.
Yeah. Just wait till we get to A Memory of Light for that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot to say about that.
let's dive right in, shall we?
Yeah. So
where do we begin?
I do want to say, for everybody who's listening in, we will be covering From the Two Rivers today. We will be covering up through the chapter called Wolf Brother, and we will be discussing the Ravens prologue that Robert Jordan wrote for the YA release of From the Two Rivers and To the Blight. So, do we want to start with Ravens then?
Because I was just going to say, Ravens is a perfect thing to start with then, and we could just knock that out of the way. Sure. Drew, start us off, dude. Ravens.
Well, before you do that, could I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah, dude.
In that version, is the Dragonmount prologue replaced?
It is.
Nope, it's still there.
After.
Okay.
So this is actually one of the things I love about what Robert Jordan did with the Ravens prologue. It was, targeted for YA readers, right? So he makes it from the point of view of 9-year-old Egwene, and he explains the world and the history of the world a bit more succinctly in it by having Tam al'Thor tell the story of the War of Power, and because the Dragonmount prologue standing on its own can be very confusing.
Yeah.
Like you read that and then you go straight into Rand al'Thor walking down the Quarry Road and you're like, wait, what? Like, what did I just read? I don't know, And so he gives context for the Dragonmount prologue, and he moves into it so well with that final line of Egwene wondering, and what actually happened back then anyway? And that's how Ravens ends, and then it goes straight into Dragonmount, and you find out what actually happened back then. It was a really deft, little bit of writing on Jordan's part. But beyond that, staying in the writing theme, the Ravens prologue is a subtle, but if you're paying attention, expertly done example of what kind of narrator Robert Jordan's going to be using, and that is the unreliable narrator. This is 9-year-old Egwene, and the impression, if you don't read closely, if you just, read through it and take the broad strokes of it, it's that, she's the best water carrier ever. She's going to work hard. She's ambitious. And then at the end, you find out she only had to be a water carrier for 1 more year, and then she got promoted. And you're like, oh, wow, she was the best water carrier ever. And that's the message you take away from it. But when you actually pay attention to the details, she does nothing but slack off in this.
Yeah.
Like, she's constantly saying, I'm working hard. I'm working so much harder than these other people. But while she's saying that, she's standing around and eavesdropping, or making fun of her sister, embarrassing her sister in front of her friends, or, going and, trying to find Rand and all this stuff, and thinking uncharitable things about everybody around her. Which,
typical Egwene, in other words.
Get used to that.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's a great example of the unreliable narrator, where if you just kind of read through the surface and don't, really dig into what you're reading on the page here, you can come away with a very different opinion of the character than you might otherwise. So
yeah, no, like I started as Drew did. I started with the young adult release From the Two Rivers. I've never really known the Wheel of Time without this prologue, and I can only imagine how surreal it would have been to read for those who actually started with Dragonmount in the first place. But I do admit that I can't really fully appreciate it, because I started with each of these characters right here in Ravens. And I can't really say everything I want to and everything I had originally written down about this prologue without spoiling the future of the Wheel of Time. But I do want to say that we can even see, as Drew said, even at age 9, Egwene was the kind of, who exactly Egwene was. She was the kind of person to ostensibly throw herself into something, as you said, Drew, she was going to be the best water carrier ever. A couple things I found about Jordan, though, specifically as an author in this prologue, though, there were a few points at which he was not quite so subtle with Egwene's personality, and I have an example here. There was a point at which she said, she wished she could have cut her hair at her shoulders, or even shorter like the boys. She would not need to have long hair for years yet, after all. Why did you have to keep doing something just because it had always been done that way? And obviously not to get into precisely why, but for those who have read further ahead in the series, we see how Egwene, though much younger, is still absolutely 100% Egwene in this prologue. So, yeah.
For a long time we had this running. It wasn't really it was half a gag and half a legit theory that Egwene was a dark friend.
Wait, when was
it was
this?
mostly a gag.
Yeah, it sounds like.
But
depends
but it's
on
one of those things. You start viewing it from that perspective,
like
and
her?
her whole character takes on new dimensions. But obviously, we were proven wrong.
In alternate universe, I bet she was.
Oh man,
I bet she was.
But yeah, I mean, the prologue, Ravens. There was one detail, and this is the final thing I had written down about this prologue. There's one detail I actually didn't realize I had missed the first 100 times that I read this thing, and that was the fact that Nynaeve was actually orphaned.
Yeah.
How did I read this so many times and not pick up on that detail? Like, I figured she had lost her parents, but somewhere in between, like, the start of her apprenticeship and taking an apprentice of her own when she was already wisdom. I don't remember somehow, like, reading that she actually lost her parents, and that's why she became, I think it's Mistress Baron?
Yeah, Doral
like her
Baron.
apprentice.
So, yeah, she lost her mother when she was very young. And she was raised mostly by her father, and then she lost her father. So
as the son that he never had, or something.
Yeah. There's also speaking of that little mini scene with Nynaeve and the wisdom Mistress Baron.
Yeah.
There's a pretty big clue there that Mistress Baron can channel and knew that Nynaeve could channel, because we get the information that Mistress Baron's previous apprentice was also a channeler, had the spark, and she died of the disease.
Well, I mean, if you're just starting the Wheel of Time right now, you wouldn't know that, though.
Well, no, but we know it now.
Yeah.
Do we? Oh, yeah, that's right, because Moraine explains that to never mind. Sorry, my apologies.
And then in this scene, Mistress Baron, she has Nynaeve handle dressing, the wound and everything. And then as soon as Nynaeve's done with it, she immediately unwraps it and sees that it's not healed, and she's disappointed.
Disappointed, yeah, she is.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Again, Drew, this was the first time I picked out that detail.
Oh.
And it goes to show just how much can be gleaned just on rereads. It's amazing how we continue to find new things. Lauren, it sounds like you're just realizing this too.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I read it the first time.
You did.
Okay, well then I don't remember any of it.
I made sure you read it before you started the series.
Sure?
Yeah.
Like, you gave her From the Two Rivers, you didn't give her the Eye of the World?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, Lauren, I read it 100 times. I didn't pick it up until now. If you've only read it once or twice or 3 times, I mean, it's still astounding, So, yeah. Is that everything we want to talk about with the prologue, Ravens? You want to just kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of the narrative here?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So let's we might as well cover a little bit about Dragonmount, because listening to it is still, it's kind of cool going back, having future context, knowing that you're reading the Age of Legends. I can't get over how cool of and surreal of an experience that is. I mean, there's still a lot of mystery. There's still a lot of things being covered. But it's just so many great lines to begin, just enough to make you curious. Jordan brings you in right away with this kind of dark, chaotic atmosphere. We have the earth rumbled and Jesus Christ, I can't speak, in memory, groaned as if to deny what happened. We have the dead lay everywhere, the stones that had flowed and sought almost alive. This sense of mystery and madness of the entire world upended. And then in the center of that, directly personifying that madness, is the man Luz Theron. And his personality, such a contrast to his surroundings. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliantly done. What about you guys?
I like the prologue still, despite a little bit of what the Man in Black says is a little cheesy and repetitive at times. That could maybe have used some pruning, but at first read, a lot of the language and the descriptions just confused the hell out of me. I had no idea what he meant by the stones had flown, almost as if they were alive. But rereading with what I know now, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, but exactly.
But the atmosphere was good as well.
Yeah, the Elon Morin, the betrayer of hope, as we see in the prologue there, he is a little mustache twirlingly evil.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I also think that kind of sets the tone, and he uses that as a kind of a hint, going forward, for what kind of character the betrayer of hope, Elon Morin, is.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, after watching that one episode, Winter Dragon, where they do Dragon Mount, I like
Beautiful.
the way that they illustrate his madness. Like, yes, there are problems with that one episode, but I like they have these little dolls on the floor everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I liked that touch as well.
And it's a mess. And he's just that's what he's seeing, and he like, doesn't he like pick up one of the dolls or something, or like touches it, and he's
I don't
like
remember.
walking around like.
Absolutely forgot this even existed until you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm sorry that it's in your mind again.
And I'll be a little contrary here, but I actually kind of liked it in a weird way when it first came out, and it wasn't until like I heard everybody else's gripes about it, and I started to look at it in a different light. I mean, I see a lot of what everybody was saying was very valid, but going into it with a totally just sterile a mind and just ready for it and seeing the way it was done. I mean, it was shot brilliantly. I mean, I a small part of me really, really kind of liked it when it first came out.
Yeah, I mean, and for what it was, given the time constraints and the budget constraints they had on it, like it was creative. It was kind of neatly done. My only I shouldn't say my only, my biggest gripe with it was just the way they ended it.
It was just because they had to create something so that they could hold on to the rights.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, every 7 years a studio has to, create something and release something for public consumption with what they are licensing, or it kind of just the rights expire, from what I understand, and it's no good. They kind of lose their investment. So I mean, that's why we had so many really crappy Spider-Man reboots for a long time, because Sony was holding onto the rights for Spider-Man for a long time. But that's totally aside the point. Let's get back into the Eye of the World here.
But yeah, I also want to point out in the prologue here, we see a couple of things with the magic used, right? We we see traveling, but we see a specific kind of traveling.
Yep.
It's traveling with the true power and not the one power.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, because it's not with a gateway. It's like the shimmer.
Yeah, because I was so confused about how there was no opening in the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then another kind of a big misconception I see in a lot of the
Would
fandom.
that not be a spoiler, though, for somebody going forward?
Okay, so I don't think we should have to worry about spoilers with the Wheel of Time episodes unless we have new readers as guests on these episodes.
Okay.
We should have talked about this beforehand, but everybody listening to these episodes will have already read the books.
This is something that I had made a note to talk to you about, and I actually forgot to mention this during our housekeeping portion.
Same.
Should we just retcon what I said earlier and actually
we'll just chop that out. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, this feels so good that I get to spoil whatever the hell I want to spoil unless somebody's on.
Yeah. So we will just we will have a couple episodes with our friends John and Peter on, who are in the middle of their first read. So for those episodes,
those are going to be tough at that point not to spoil it.
Yeah,
but okay, I see what's going on. Okay.
Yeah. So we we see the shimmer with Elon Morin with the Shamael coming in, and that's the true power traveling, not gateways with the one power. And then, as I was saying, the misconception that a lot of people have is with Luce Theron. He does not balefire himself, even though the description sounds kind of like the liquefied. It sounds like it. What he did was just he overdrew the power.
Yeah, if he had balefired himself, he would have removed him from the pattern. He wouldn't have been able to balefire himself and then paradox.
Well, it would have brought up the balefire paradox.
And it is more than just overdrawing. He does something with the power.
He does something.
He creates the mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Whereas, someone else who's overdrawing would just probably burn themselves out or explode, maybe, but not in such a dramatic fashion.
Well, I mean, we see it at the end of the series, too.
Yeah. Egwene.
Yeah.
With Egwene.
Yeah.
So.
We see what it looks like.
But
we got
she
a few
also does
choice
something with
examples of what it looks like and the results of somebody drawing too much of the one power and power, and something happens there, something different, and I was really taken aback by how cool that scene was. I mean, the description of the stone turning to vapor at its touch, the fact that anybody who glimpsed this bolt even for a second would have been blinded permanently. I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like 11-year-old Rob was just like goosebumps everywhere reading this. It was so good.
Yeah.
One thing first-time Pat reader didn't realize is that the geographical changes caused by Luz Theron's channeling made the island of Tarvalon in the shape of, well, you know what it's in the shape of.
I didn't know that for the longest
Within
time.
the realm of decency, I can't just come out and say it, but it was really interesting, and the mountain could maybe symbolize
Oh goodness.
the male version of that. If that's a stretch, that's much more of a stretch than the obvious, on purpose Tarvalon.
It's not a stretch. It was purposefully done. There's so much that has to do with the one power, and there's so much with like gender dynamics in this series. Like, so I was just on a panel at JordanCon this year where we talked about this and gender dynamics in the Wheel of Time, and a big part of it is the use of the one power and a lot of the symbolism there, and like how like men and women like accessing the one power is straight up a metaphor for sex. It's like men have to like reach out and take it, and women open up and surrender to it, and it's there's and I don't know we don't need to go into that now, but I very much think the whole Dragon Mount Tarvalon, that symbolism was not only anticipated by Robert Jordan, but purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
There's no way Harriet missed that either.
Yeah, something that 11-year-old Rob, though, had no context and just went about 8 miles over top of his head.
And it was meant to.
Yeah, and that's how you do content for adults that kids can also read within the realms of decency.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very well done.
While we're on the subject of this prologue, before we get off of it, there was one more detail that I noticed. Drew, you just brought up about how the traveling, that small detail of the method in which Luz Theron employed his traveling, it was the true power. There's another kind of smaller detail that I noticed as well, similar to that, but nothing really with the true power, but about Luz Theron's particular abilities. When he traveled to the site of what would later become Dragon Mount, he could sense that there were no people within 100 leagues. Again, I had never picked up on that before, but seeing and knowing exactly what the dragon represents and the abilities of a self-actualized a dragon, it's unbelievable how Robert Jordan managed to plant an ability like that so early on in this series and still have it come to fruition again later. I thought it was awesome.
Oh yeah, it's a really cool bit of foreshadowing, and it's appropriate that right after the end of that prologue is when we get those first prophecies about the dragon breaking the land and all of that. And
one is so dark, and the other one offers a little bit of light.
I do want to clarify, though. Luz Theron did not use the true power to travel. Ishamael used the true power to travel.
Ishamael's, but Luz Theron, hold on.
Luz Theron, it just says Luz Theron traveled. It doesn't have any description of what it is.
But no gateway opens. He's just suddenly
we don't know that. There's no description. It just says he traveled. There's no description of what he did.
Oh, okay, so we can assume that...
Yeah, that there was a gateway. But we see Ishamael travel, and he appears in this, shimmer, this, warp.
Okay, okay. Excellent.
Yeah. No, Luz Theron has no access to the true power.
Because the fact that he was so kind of in the madness, then again, at that point, he was
healed.
No, he was healed. Okay, I was thinking that his madness perhaps had granted him access to the true power at that point.
No,
but you're right. He's healed at that
point. True power access can only be granted with the Dark One's will.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, let's move on to the Eye of the World proper, right?
Yeah. Should we just start with our characters?
Well, no. So I want to talk about kind of, again, the large scale writing and how. Robert Jordan has this brilliant way with developing a sense of wonder. And as going back and reading this now in 2019, after I've spent the better part of the last 5 years reading everything other than the Wheel of Time, and I've noticed that even in authors like Brandon Sanderson, and there isn't the same sense of wonder to fantasy now. Everything has been brought down. It's like, while Sanderson is still high fantasy, his worlds are so different. It's hard to put yourself in those shoes. It's hard to experience and empathize with the wonder. Like Rand has wonder in the Eye of the World. Kaladin in The Way of Kings does not experience wonder. Vin in Mistborn doesn't experience wonder. Like, the world is the world to them. Rand is discovering the world in The Wheel of Time. And so it's that sense of discovery and wonder and awe that Robert Jordan nailed so well. And part of it is setting the tone with that opening sequence. The Wheel of Time turns and ages come and pass. It gives it this mythic, larger-than-life kind of feel. And that's lacking in, like, pretty much all modern fantasy. Like, people just don't write those books anymore.
In a way that I don't think is coincidental at all, the only other book that I can think of off the top of my head that does provide that is The Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because, again, you have this fish out of water scenario with Frodo and the Hobbits, and the more wiser, experienced members of their company. And this is also a good moment to point out that just so much of the Eye of the World is The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Well, not so much, but a solid
Robert
portion.
Jordan specifically wrote the beginning of Eye of the World to be an homage to The Lord of the Rings, to give familiar ground for readers to tread and gain his trust before throwing them off the deep end with the second half of the Eye of the World and the rest of the series.
So let me just break down a few examples for you. You have Hadden, Fane, and Gollum. You have Lan and Aragorn. You have the Ogier and the Ents. You have
the
whole
ways and the
concept
Mines of Moria.
Like, the journey. Our heroes from Rand, and
well, that's by no means
Hobbits.
Unique to Lord of the Rings.
No,
that's Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey.
But it is there on purpose.
Yeah,
it is still there on purpose. Moiraine and Gandalf fulfill a lot of the same role. Although they're less directly similar than, like, your Aragorn and Lan, the uncrowned king who's been exiled from his home, and has sworn, vengeance and what have you.
Yeah. And you have this ultimate prophecy, the Black Mountain, the place where all things end.
The Dark One.
There are a lot of parallels.
Myrddraal and Nazgul. The list goes on, and I'm not saying that I think it's a bad thing, mark you. But as astute readers, we have to point out that it is there, and it does serve a legit purpose. And
And I also want to point out, like, that there's a difference between inspiration and homage and plagiarism, which is like an issue that, for instance, Terry Goodkind has, where he straight ripped things off of the Wheel of Time, and not classic fantasy tropes like the wise mentor and the exiled king and things like that, and building the hero's journey. He has all of those things as well.
Blatant names.
But he has other things, like he has
the Stone of Tears.
He has a thing. He has a thing called the Radahan, that is
a domination band,
collar and chain that women who can use magic use to control other magic users.
Gee.
Wow. And he's got the Sisters
blood
of the Light,
who are the children of the light.
Yeah. He's got the Sisters of the Light, who are an all-female magic user organization who refuse to admit that there are evil magic users in their ranks until it's proven they exist, and then everybody's like, oh yeah, no, the Sisters of the Dark are there. Like, there are things that, there are broad strokes inspirations that are common across the fantasy genre, and then there are crazy detail ripoffs.
But remember,
like,
according to Goodkind,
oh yeah, and then he claims he's never read Robert Jordan. He doesn't read fantasy at all.
It's you're probably not old enough to be reading his books in the first place.
Oh yeah, that was also the most, like, he's such an ass.
I wanted to fucking fucking slapped the shit out. Sorry, let's not make this too negative. I love this episode. This is the Eye of the World.
Back to the Eye of the World. Back to the Eye of the World. Oh no. I just spilled my beer.
It's okay. We're getting animated. It's good. This is good podcast content.
Yeah, my inner Italian was coming out, and I was gesticulating with my beer in my hand. But going back to this sense of wonder and the way he slowly expands the world for us, it's a way for an author to build a crazy, in-depth fantasy world without overwhelming the reader. He throws around a lot of names, a lot of capital letter words in the Dragonmount prologue. And he throws around a lot more in the early chapters of The Eye of the World. But he does it in a way that, his characters also don't understand them. So it's not overwhelming to us. It's, to make a comparison to the Stormlight Archive, one of the reasons why a lot of people have a hard time with The Way of Kings is that the opening chapters of it throw around a lot of these terms and things, but the characters themselves understand them. But we don't. So we have to work a lot harder to put it together, And he gives some explanation for things, but it's not the same as the character discovering with us, which Robert Jordan does in The Eye of the World.
Yeah. I'd agree. I definitely very, very much agree.
And despite that, a lot of the names in the Dragonmount prologue aren't even relevant for a while. So
you humbled me at the gates of Paradisen. I was like, what? What's going on?
And even we don't fully understand the significance of those couple sentences. You summon the 9 rods of Dominion. It's like,
oh yeah,
we're still like, what the hell are those? Are they oath rods?
They're not oath rods. The
No,
9 rods of Dominion are the 9.
Oh, you actually don't know
the main regions of the Age of Legends.
They're
way more than
figureheads.
So the oath rods are called binders. Remember?
Yeah.
And they're we see an oath rod with the number 111 on it. So there's obviously way more than 9 of them. Mm-hmm. No, the 9 rods of Dominion were the 9 regional governors of the Age of Legends.
They're figureheads, rulers in their own right. And there was also the 17 generals of Dawn's Gate, weren't there? Or was that listed in this prologue yet?
It wasn't.
No, that's not in the prologue.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But
it's okay. We don't care about spoilers. So, yeah. Anything else stylistically you want to discuss about Jordan and the way he approached the story before we start talking about our characters on an individual level?
Just one minor point that a lot of people say that in order to make successful adaptations to any sort of film with these books, they'd have to cut out a lot due to the length. I think that's kind of nonsense because when you actually examine a lot of the writing, yes, the books are long, but they're long due to lengthy descriptions. And the thing about any visual media is that description is an instantaneous realization on the part of the viewer. So you've instantly, from that fact alone, cut out at 25%, at least, of any given Wheel of Time book. Yeah. So that's just something, that we can bear in mind as we wait in hopeful anticipation.
Yeah, no, I never thought it would translate very well to the big screen, but as a series, absolutely, I can see it working.
Mm-hmm. And even the descriptions of the power when it's being wielded, a non-channeler would see nothing, but that is child's play to adapt to the screen, if you know what you're doing.
I mean, it's expensive, but still.
Yes, it is expensive, but
requires a lot.
Yeah,
of
that's also
After Effects,
again going back to the way that Robert Jordan eases the reader into the world by having none of the immediate characters channelers. We see Moiraine doing these crazy things, but we don't see under the hood, so to speak.
Yeah,
and we slowly discover, especially more so in the Great Hunt, but we slowly discover how the power works, and so. First off, we get to see these spectacles. We see the fun stuff. We see the booms and the explosions and Moiraine ostensibly growing, 50 feet tall, even though she's actually just walking through the gate.
Hold on, now, did she walk through the gate? Because that's something that always confused the shit out of me. Because I was like,
she specifically
said she stepped over the wall.
Yeah, with the illusion.
Yeah, she uses the Mirror of Mist to make herself look 50 feet tall.
Yeah.
And then she just walks forward, and the Mirror of Mist version of her also walks forward, but it's so big that it just looks like she steps over the wall. Because you note, the moment she steps over the wall, suddenly she's just standing outside the gate normally, and then the gate clanks shut behind her.
Yeah, so surely that would take her, like, dozens of steps to get from inside the gate outside the gate, but the giant one only takes one big step.
Yeah, because it's an illusion.
But shouldn't it mirror... You just said it mirrors her exact movements, though.
No, it doesn't mirror her exact movements.
Oh, okay.
It just mimics what she's doing.
In a non-specific kind of way.
Yeah,
now, one imagines that she's very adept at this weave, given what we come to learn about it later.
Yeah, also
and
true.
typical Aes Sedai.
Well, it is easier for women to do the Mirror of Mist.
Yeah, well, it's a weave of water and air.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And those are Moraine's
And she
strong
packs an
spots,
Angreal, of course.
aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah. But yeah, that like so there are a lot of things that like, I see people complaining about online where they're like, "Oh, Robert Jordan didn't like fully have his magic system worked out yet in Eye of the World," and that is true to an extent. But a lot of the things that people use as examples are not really valid examples, and one of those is like the traveling in the prologue, and another one is Moiraine using the Mirror of Mist. Like she didn't actually grow over the wall, and the fact that like the little conversation that happens after that, where Egwene's like, "You were so tall," and Moraine's just like, "Oh, was I? The eye can play tricks in the darkness." Like more, like he knew that it was illusion right there.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it wasn't some like thing where he was like, "Oh, maybe I'm gonna make Aes Sedai be able to grow to giant size."
No.
Like that was never the plan.
No, I didn't think for a minute that she actually grew that size. It just struck me as incongruous as how like she could take one single step and somehow Moiraine herself can just kind of scuttle out of the gate invisible to everybody else while that. I guess everybody's kind of looking up at that moment though, aren't you? There's a 50-foot tall being in front of you. You're not
like I mean,
keeping an eye on ground level.
If you think forward in the series to other examples of Aes Sedai using the Mirror of Mist to grow in size, like obviously they're still walking
right?
as normal human beings, and their illusions just walk forward at a normal pace, you know, as well. So it's like it's not an exact like physical representation where like your one step goes 3 feet, so your illusion, you know, has to only go like 3 feet for each step too. Like, you know, it would be useless. An illusion.
It would be a functionally useless piece of magic if it did operate under those rules.
So, but yeah, but let's move into characters now, because you know I feel like we've kind of rambled a little bit through the first part of this.
Yeah, we're about 45 minutes in. We haven't started talking about characters yet. Let's get into Rand al'Thor. I mean, we have nowhere else to start, do we?
Yeah.
Nowhere.
What? Nowhere.
I think it's a you know, it's a fun return to Rand for me.
Yeah.
Especially in comparison to where he goes in the series. Seeing him so self-conscious and seeing him lack you know, confidence, and seeing him taking the first steps on his journey, like growing as a person, even just, you know, the 1 week between Winternight and Baerlon, and Nynaeve remarks to him, "You've grown." You know, just in that little bit of time, Rand starts developing the self-confidence that will come to define his character, for better or worse, later down the road.
Well, he takes a while to get there.
Yeah, I'm saying this is the first steps.
Yeah, I just mean, like, we've got at least 3 books in the series of him, like, being so unsure of himself and...
Yes, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's just the first steps.
I'm just saying, he has a full arc. It's not like all of a sudden he realizes he's a magic user and he's like, oh, I can do this now.
Yes.
No, I don't think that was... Yeah.
That's how it sounded when you said it.
No.
But... you know, it's hard to imagine Rand al'Thor this young. You know, like I'm 27 now, and it is surreal to realize that, like, right now I'm almost a decade older than Rand is here, and I'm fairly certain I'm the youngest one on this podcast today. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, or actually ever. Have we ever even had a guest younger than I am? I don't think we have at this point.
Yes, Meg.
Oh, Meg's
younger than I am?
Yeah, Meg's younger.
Ah, okay. Well, then I'm not the youngest. There you go. Boom. Eat it, Meg. But, when I was reading these books during my early teen years, I was like, this guy is me. It's not that he and I had a lot in common, but it's something about how he read and Randall Thor's like his thought processes. It kind of mixed very similar with my own, like the duties he had, helping his father with chores, meeting up with his friends, trying to find time with them, the manner in which he thinks about girls near his own age with this kind of sense of this mixture of wonder and discomfort blended together. And this is very much a coming of age story. It only serves to make like the future of this series carry so much weight with those who are themselves A, coming of age in their own right, and B, just starting to discover real books.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where by having us discover the world along with Rand, it makes it easier for us to step into Rand's shoes. Even if we may not necessarily be the same personality as Rand or whatever, it's still easy to empathize with him because we are, in a literary sense, taking the same steps he is.
Yeah, no, and he definitely reads like so viscerally. Like, okay, take for example this sense of panic that Jordan instills like through Rand's thought processes as he returns to the broken farmhouse to gather supplies. He's facing, or ostensibly to face Trollocs or the light knows what else. And these are some of my first similes. As careful as a mouse exploring a hawk's nest. These are moments where 11-year-old Rob was like David Charleston from the Reckoners, just kind of sitting there going, "Wow, that was a great metaphor." Yeah, I mean, there's so many things about Rand were just so quaint to me when I was a teenager. It's hard to believe that. I mean, I think Robert Jordan was probably in his 40s or 50s already by the time he was writing this. It just he wrote a character that just felt so natural to somebody like me at the time.
Yeah.
How anyone can talk about their favorite characters in the Wheel of Time without mentioning Rand is entirely beyond me. So I'm just going to say that he is my favorite character without a glimmer of doubt, because if you offered me the chance to be anyone in the Wheel of Time, it would be Rand, without a moment's hesitation. A lot of people would say Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's
no.
I wouldn't want to be Matt, but I would like to hang out with Matt.
Yeah.
No,
I'd like to go drinking with
Matt.
Matt.
That's why I want to be Rand. I don't want to be Matt, but I would like hanging out.
I want to go drinking with Matt and Brigitte. That'd be awesome.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Rand, I don't know. He becomes such a bummer of a guy to hang out with, though, later, doesn't he? Till the very, very, very end. I don't know.
That's
Rand, he's got so much on his plate.
We can cover why that is later, but one thing about Rand in this book that I particularly like is that we see glimmers of his personality as it will come to be in the later books. Mm-hmm. It's not like he had a complete 180 change of character.
Oh, no, there was a very long journey involved. Yeah.
When we see the world pushing him and his reactions to that, that's very closely mirrored in what happens later.
Yeah,
now, he's a legit king and has the powers of a god, but,
It's a matter of scale.
Yeah,
in Eye of the World.
Precise. It's not a matter of... It's quantitative rather than qualitative.
Yeah.
It would feel wrong if it happened all at once, but the fact that we got to see that gradual change over all of this... Well, not a lot of time, narratively speaking, but for our experience, it was a long time.
Well, and the point I think Pat is making is that it's not so much of a change. Rand still, at his core, reacts the same to things in Eye of the World as he does, say, in Lord of Chaos or Winter's Heart. It's just a matter of scale and then a twisting from his madness eventually. It's that, the core of his character is established in Eye of the World.
And I'll go further than that and say every other character as well.
Oh, yeah. Certainly Egwene, certainly Perrin.
Yeah.
Matt less so, but Matt has a more dramatic, kind of...
I might be arguing to say Matt more so than anybody else. I mean, he's clearly got that mischievous trickster personality. It's just never...
But when we get into his head, he's less so of a mischievous trickster.
I suppose, but we don't get into his head in this volume at all.
No, we don't.
No.
And that's why I'm saying in this book, Matt doesn't as fully reflect his later self as like Perrin and Rand and Egwene do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he probably has the most profound change due to the stylistic differences between Sanderson and Jordan.
Oh, well, we'll get into that way down the road.
Oh yeah.
But well,
yes,
let's talk about Matt right now. Let's
yeah, I mean, I have Matt and Perrin kind of like intertwined in my notes here because they're both tertiary characters in this volume. And it's a bit surreal seeing as, you know, how vital they become later and later in the series. And I wrote down, it's odd how I regard Matt now, because he used to be one of my favorite characters, despite the fact that he rarely acts more than half of his own age. Looking back now...
in Eye of the World.
Yes, yeah, in Eye of the World. And looking back now, he kind of just frustrates me now that I'm 27, and I'm just reading him. It's like, dude, at least act like you're 12 or 14. He's acting like a 6-year-old in a lot of cases. Perrin, on the other hand, still reads like Perrin.
Yeah.
You know, strong but gentle, slow of thought, definitely not lacking in it though. Like Perrin still to me reads a lot more like Perrin than Matt does later Matt.
Yeah, so with Matt there was definitely a sense of frustration for me as well, and it kind of always is with Matt reading Eye of the World, even before he gets the dagger. And although there was actually something I picked up on, and maybe I picked up on this in the past and forgot about it, but
yeah.
When they flee Mordeth and they're all like panicking and stuff, Matt starts saying, "At least I," and then he gets cut off, and he was totally about to say, "At least I got this," and was about to pull out the dagger.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's awful.
Was he? Oh my god, he totally was that bastard. What? Ah.
Yeah, but he got interrupted, so nobody finds out about it until way too late.
Oh my.
But the whole plot line with the dagger and his like immaturity is really the seminal moment for his early character development.
Yeah, I can see that.
It reminds me of a line that Egwene says later on, like, maybe you won't play so many tricks on people now that one so nasty has been played on you. I might be paraphrasing that a little bit, but
no, I remember the line. Yeah,
that's very accurate. Nynaeve. Right?
Nynaeve.
Let's talk about one of the ones I actually like.
You like Nynaeve?
Like.
So yeah, again, like, when I was younger reading through this the first time, I didn't like Nynaeve at all.
Yeah.
Up until a certain point in the series, we'll get to later. But reading through this, I enjoy her greatly. I agree with her on so many things.
Yeah, and it could be because we are her age now.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have more of an understanding. Like, you're not the little kid wanting to go on the adventure anymore. You're an adult reading this now,
and you're just trying to stop the kids from being idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You recognize that Nynaeve is actually acting for the best, as far as she knows anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like she's the school mistress who's telling you not to have fun anymore. Yeah. Although that was my impression, like you said, for a lot of the early reading.
As a teenager, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my criticism of her at the time was unfounded.
Yeah.
And she is stubborn, but she's almost less stubborn in this one than I think she becomes later on.
I agree. She's actually surprisingly malleable. The scenes with her and Baerlon, and then when she meets up with Moiraine and Lan, like she very quickly recognizes the reality of her situation and adjusts her point of view in accordance to that. Where like, she's given opportunities to dig her heels in and be like, no, I'm not going with you.
Yeah.
But she learns the new information, in the case of Moiraine and Lan, that scene after Shadow Lorga, she learns she can channel, and she's like, okay, well, I'm then going to use this to further my goals of protecting the people I love.
No. She says, I'm going to use this to get back at you, Moiraine.
Yeah.
And that's something that struck me as
she's
remarkably
willing
juvenile.
to use it to get back at Moiraine. But she goes with them because she still feels the need to protect.
See, I felt like that was ostensibly the reason that she gave to Moiraine and Lan, but internally, she feels more vindictive to me. She felt like she was doing this more so to get back at Moiraine for everything that she thinks
I don't think that's her main
done.
drive, though.
No, it's not her main drive.
At all. Like,
well, no,
yes,
if it comes to getting back at Moiraine versus protecting the others, I would never argue that she wouldn't choose protecting the others. but there's just so much internal dialogue with Nynaeve when she's just so vicious towards everything Moiraine, despite Moiraine's good intentions and having no reason at this point to doubt Moiraine.
Ooh, I disagree.
Yes,
she has lots of reason
nothing.
to doubt Moiraine.
No, Moiraine has done nothing but try and protect these three and try to protect Emmonsfield and everything that she does.
But that's only because we have that information. From Nynaeve's perspective, Nynaeve doesn't fully
What do
understand.
we have that
everything.
Nynaeve doesn't at this point? At this point.
Yeah. So to Nynaeve, she still like she doesn't fully believe that that Moiraine is telling the truth.
And she is lying.
But that's my
in
point.
some
Was what reason
respect.
does she have to believe that Moiraine is not telling the truth when everything up to this point has been
Because
done for
her
the
whole
boys?
life she's been hearing about Aes Sedai being tricksters and playing games.
So have
and
Rand, Matt, and Perrin, and they all trust Moiraine.
No, they don't.
Well,
No.
I guess not. Hold on. Let me back up a little bit there. They don't openly trust her, but they still put their lives in her hands.
because they have no other option.
Oh, they have plenty of other options. I guess they could just run away, couldn't they?
Well, but they know that if they run away, they're gonna die.
Yep.
Right. Like, the pursuit of the shadow is so virulent.
Yeah,
And,
I can see
effective
that, actually.
well, in every aspect that doesn't involve Moiraine.
Yeah.
Like, they almost get made so many times when she's not there.
Yeah.
You know, like, they view her as their only real protection.
And she enforces that too.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, Rand and Matt have this argument a lot of the time, post him finding the dagger, where Matt is arguing for that, like, to just say, screw Moiraine, let's go off and do our own thing, and Rand says, well, I don't think we'd make it very far
Yeah.
if we did that.
And we'll get to that more, in the
and
second
he's entirely
half of
correct.
But,
Yeah.
but it's, like, in the first half, it's driven home with Rand with the Myrddraal in the Stag and Lion, and then again with the Trollocs outside of Shadar Logoth, that they're like, we're dead unless we stick with Moiraine and Lan.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's a fact of
And it's true.
necessity for them.
You can't blame them for thinking that.
But
No, Nynaeve is certainly vindictive toward Moiraine, though.
Yeah.
That is not
Oh,
something.
she is. Like,
that is
she
not
is
something that
completely-
really could be
I find
understated. She
Nynaeve
never
completely
acts on
irrational.
it.
I
in
think
terms
it's
of
just
Moiraine.
makes her more realistic. Her
Yeah.
character, like,
Yeah.
it's just that little thought.
And it's
Oh, yeah.
necessary for one other reason, because we get to see in all of Nynaeve's points of view her building up her block.
yes.
The foundations for her
building it
block
up.
are just they're laid out very clearly.
Yeah.
Due to her distrust of Moiraine and her fear of the power and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
And
I think
that
it's very
only when
indicative
she's
of the human
angry at
condition to kind of
Moiraine.
to personify all of your problems in somebody. For Nynaeve, this is Moiraine,
Right.
of course. I mean, Moiraine is a very threatening figure to Nynaeve in terms of like her authority with the Emon's fielders. You know, she I don't know. She as a teenager, she was very frustrating for me to read. Now that I'm older and closer to her age, I have a lot more sympathy for a lot of things that she says. But overall, I can't quite get over just how nasty and vicious she is when everything concerning Moiraine. Like, I don't know. And this could be because I'm such a Moiraine fanboy. You guys, since we're actually on this subject, you want to transition into Moiraine since we're here? Or Drew, do you have anything else to say? It looks like you want to say something.
Well, so I was gonna move on to Moiraine myself, and that being
start us off, dude.
Robert Jordan wrote Moiraine purposefully kind of nebulous in the early books, especially in this early part of Eye of the World, because I think he wanted people to wonder, is she really, serving the light? Is she a dark friend? What are her motivations? And, and I think that, the one line where she says, like, I will destroy you if necessary.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. How we got to that point in the first half?
Yeah, that's...
I'm just going off memory at this point. Okay, cool.
When you were reading through the series for the first time, did you ever find yourself wondering, is Moiraine a dark friend?
Nope, not once. Ever.
Fanboy.
I didn't really buy it either, to be honest.
Not once did I even consider it.
All that I got the impression of is what turns out to actually be the case, that she is part of the Aes Sedai, but her goals are not oriented toward the mainstream of Aes Sedai thought, and she's willing to act outside of that.
Mm-hmm. So that was the same with me, but there were a couple of points where I think Robert Jordan specifically planted seeds, and we'll get into that more in the Great Hunt and the Dragon Reborn. But one of them was in this book with her willingness to destroy the boys.
See, that's where I feel like she cemented the fact that she was not a dark friend. Because if she was a dark friend, she could have
says that
done
she
nothing
will
and given
destroy
them
them
to
to prevent them from getting into the Dark One's hands. But we also see, as the series goes on, dark friends working at cross purposes, and
okay,
so
okay, fair. I'll give you that.
But I mean, I never really bought it myself. I know there were people who were ardent supporters of Moiraine as a dark friend on
I don't know how
on the forums and things like that, and they there were a couple of points later in the series that they would always use as their evidence for that. But yeah, I'm glad that I'm not alone in this. That I never really bought that she was that she really had something nefarious in mind. Yeah,
but that brings a quick aside about that line of her destroying them. That illustrates one of the things about this book, and that's that Jordan hadn't really nailed down the concept of the three oaths. The three oaths, as stated, are never mentioned in the Eye of the World. All that's ever said is that Aes Sedai don't lie, but the truth in Aes Sedai tells you might not be the truth you think it is. Now that provides the framework for one of the oaths, but it's not formally stated that this is something they do and it's binding.
Really? We never got those words, the three oaths in this book, not once?
No, not once.
If you're looking for something Drew, I could search it in my e-reader and find it 10 times faster, probably.
No, I got it here. I'm looking in the glossary.
So you can tell he has the concept of them down, but we okay, there's a few things that we know. First of all, that Moiraine cannot lie directly. We also know that she can't harm someone who isn't a dark friend or when she's not in danger, right? Now those two things cannot coexist in the sentence that Moiraine says, I will destroy you.
If she says she's willing to destroy the three boys rather than the dark one.
Who she knows are not dark friends, or at least has no reason to think that they are, and who wouldn't directly be endangering her if the shadow got them.
Before I let the dark one have you, I will destroy you myself.
Well, exactly.
I think were the words. Exactly. I didn't even read that part. I just know that off by heart. Something like that. Damn, that's cold. Chilling.
No, it is. It's just it's never anything that's really retconned either, in my understanding. It's just one of those details that that him laying out the three oaths later on kind of omitted, I guess you could say. And with our understanding of the way the oaths work, I don't think there's a way around it. It's just
I can't see a way. Nope.
It's just one of those things.
What do you have to say, Drew?
I mean, there are plenty of ways that she could destroy them without breaking the oaths.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to use the one power.
She doesn't, I don't know, could she leave them for the Trollocs? Would the oaths let her do that? I think they would.
Yeah, well, but I mean, she's saying she would sooner kill them than leave them for the Trollocs. But she could just have Lan kill them.
Yeah.
Right, but
and he specifically says that he would several times. He makes it very clear that he is willing to do that.
Right, I don't know.
Doesn't he?
To me, the difference between I will destroy you and I'll have my warder destroy you.
But the truth in Aes Sedai speaks is not always the truth you think you hear.
Well, she can compel him too, so it would.
I don't think she knows the weave for compulsion.
No, I mean.
No, but with the bond. The bond.
She could compel Lan.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were saying she could compel, Rand.
No.
But
no, that specifically doesn't work on him, but as well as it does with others, like with the coin that she gives, right? Huh?
What?
Doesn't the coin kind of normally kind of form like a sort of bond that makes somebody more willing to do what she says?
No,
for some reason it
The
doesn't
coin
work
is not a warder
Rand.
bond. All the coin
does...
not
a warder. Nothing to do with a warder bond.
No, all the coin does is allow her to locate them.
Yeah.
Isn't there a point at which she says one of the clues that ticked her off that Rand was a channeler? Hold on.
Is that he resisted?
You're definitely.
You're right.
I'm just
Rob.
worried about spoilers at this point.
She definitely
specifically says One of the things that clued me to the fact that you were a channeler is the fact that you resisted the compulsion that the coin gives you.
And it's not like full-on compulsion.
It's not compulsion. It's not like an actual weave of compulsion.
I do not remember this at all.
Something
When does this happen?
Perhaps one of these proprietary weaves that Moraine herself
this happen?
Has discovered, like her listening. It's in The Eye of the World. I think she says that at the end of The Eye of the World.
I think it's in
Faldara.
I'll have to keep an eye out for that. I do not remember this.
After she has the powwow with Pat and Fane, she comes back and she gives a lot of details.
I think it's in the conversation when she's explaining to Rand the things that clued her into the fact that he is a channeler. The fact that Bella was not tired on their flee from Emmons Field. That this is one detail amongst those.
Oh yeah, it might not be in Faldara. It might be like at the very end.
Well, the end is Faldara, right? At the Eye of the World?
No, before they go to the Eye of the World.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
But yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
But no, Moraine's solid and mysterious in this book.
Moraine, awesome.
So,
you know,
I want to talk about Min, because I have kind of a complicated relationship with Min's character in this series, but in this book, in this read through, I enjoyed her a lot. I did not like her the first, when I read this when I was younger. She annoyed me. She was like the teasing girl.
Yeah.
Okay. And but in this, like, I kind of understand her a little more, and I also found her honestly hilarious. There was one line that really leapt out at me that made me laugh out loud, and it was when Tom was kind of like lingering, and she just turns to him and goes, "Go juggle something." She's like, "I'm trying to talk to Rand. Go juggle something." Like,
yeah.
No, I agree. I like her a lot more in this book, even as as brief as an appearance as she makes, than later on. And as I said to you before, the problem is later on is that she's in love with Rand.
Yeah.
If she wasn't in love with Rand right away, I think she still could have been enjoyable.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't have an issue with her like falling in love with him right away. My issue with her later on is due to other things, but her and like those other things are just not present in this book. So she's a fine character. She's amusing and she provides a good little bit of mystery. Mm-hmm. It's she's of course a vehicle for foreshadowing. We get some fun.
That's where all my points concerning Min are focused with foreshadowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Touching on the character of Balsamon for a moment.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of moments in this series throughout all the books where I wonder, why didn't the Forsaken just blank? There's almost an infinite number of things they could do. And knowing what we do about Balsamon's capabilities later on, we have to wonder, like, why didn't he just travel to where they were, snatch them up, take them to Shale Ghul, and have them forcibly turned?
Well, I don't think he knew where they were.
One could argue that's exactly
know they
what he
were
was trying
specifically
with
in the Stag and Lion.
The Forsaken weren't like Balsamon was never really imprisoned with the rest of the Forsaken in the same way. I don't think. But
he was imprisoned.
His touch on the world was still limited, wasn't it?
So he was imprisoned, but he was only partially imprisoned. So every 1,000 years, he was released so that's why for about 40 years. The
Trolloc Wars, we had Arthur Hawkwing every 1,000 years in between. Like he couldn't quite touch the world in the same way. Like he couldn't just manifest himself and then actually start showing up.
What Pat's saying is like he is out.
Yeah, he is
out
of
the world.
Now, yeah.
And what Pat's saying is like, why didn't he just do this? Well, the answer is he didn't know exactly where they were. He found them in the world of dreams, but that doesn't give him an exact location.
So you don't,
and that's why he has all of his spies out trying to find them.
Right. So your view of his claim that it's really easy to locate Ta'Veren is as skeptical as the rest of the Forsakens about that claim. They do discuss it.
I don't. So I don't think it's necessarily as skeptical, but I also don't think Rand and Mad and Perrin are as strongly Ta'Veren at this point. They just became Ta'Veren.
Yeah.
So, they're not like obviously later in the series when they're very powerfully Ta'Veren, it is clear as day where they are. You know, like Rand shows up in a city and all this crazy stuff starts happening. Like, that's not occurring in Eye of the World. You know, that's not... Their like, the strength of their pull on the pattern isn't as powerful, so it's not as easy to locate them.
Okay, so they're specifically... It's Winter Night, right?
Yeah.
Is when they become officially...
I think the Team Jordan
Ravens
was
are watching
shortly
them, aren't they,
before
in the
Winter Night.
prologue?
Shortly before.
What was that, Rob?
Weren't the Ravens already watching them in the prologue
Well,
years
yeah,
and years before?
they knew.
Well, they knew that, like, the person who was the Dragon Reborn was there, but they're not Taviran from birth. They're only Taviran when the pattern needs to make them Taviran. And the word from Team Jordan is that they became Taviran shortly before Winter Night. So.
It depends on what you consider Taviran, though, because at one point somebody asks Rand, I can't remember exactly who it was, but they say something along the lines of, "Part of me thinks Manetheren had to fall just to give Rand al'Thor a place to be born." I mean, could you not argue that that is also Taviran at work?
That's just the pattern of an age.
I guess it's yeah. Anyway, we're getting far beyond Eye of the World Part 1 here, though. We're talking, like, almost meta level stuff here.
While we're on the subject of Manetheren, I just want to give a shout-out to that amazing scene once again.
With Moiraine telling the story. Oh, my God. So good.
I have to go from there, and I don't have it with me, but there is, if you want an absolute laugh, just Google Eye of the World Reader's Digest version. And there's a hilarious, like, condensed version of the Eye of the World, and it's, you know, chock full of humor and, like, you know, twistings of things, and the story that Moiraine tells of Manetheren in that is very different, and is, like, basically just used as a distraction for all the men, where she starts telling a story about how, like, Eldrine and her chambermaid are lesbians, and like all the like Two Rivers men are like, I need to leave. Like,
what the hell?
And then later on, there's a
I'm hearing of this?
When she's teaching Egwene about the Aes Sedai, like, instead of teaching her about the One Power, she's like teaching her, like, super hardcore, like, third wave feminism, and, like, giving her the Andrea Dworkin reader, and, like, and telling Egwene that the One Power's good for all sorts of things, like vibrating. Incidentally, you'll never need a man again after you master that one.
Oh my god.
And then later, when she's talking to Nynaeve, you know, she's telling Nynaeve, like, you can channel, you can do all these things, you can blow things up, or vibrate, and Lan just cuts her off and goes, "Lay off it, would you, woman? I haven't had it in months."
It's very worth
this is
anyone's
nothing
time
that I
to
had
go
any
and
clue
read that
existed
if you
beforehand.
want a good laugh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going to be doing when we're done with the podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the old, like, classic early 2000s Watt humor things that floats around.
Yeah.
But
since we just mentioned Moiraine again really briefly, I want to kind of discuss how I thought Moiraine acted, like, in terms of, like, her bond with Lan and like his involvement in the story as well. You know, like, there's something about the two of those in combination. We have Moiraine, she's this beautiful sorceress, she's small of stature, but she's grand in vision and just sheer raw power. And then we have Lan, the consummate warrior. Like, they share such a neat duality, you know, something that defines the very essence of what I think about, you know, epic fantasy. Anytime we get a glimpse of these two fighting back to back, you know, united in purpose, willing to die for their cause, I was just, those two are so cool together, and they are, to me, in a really weird way, like the ultimate fantasy power couple, regardless of the lack of anything resembling romance. They work so well together, and, like, there's something about the two of them united in their struggle against the shadow that I don't know, like, those, like, it just works so well for me. I love it when and we don't see a whole lot of them together in the series, you know, going forward, but right now I love the fact that we get both of them doing their thing so well together. It's awesome to me.
Well, it's interesting you brought up, like, that duality, and you brought up Moiraine's stature and how she's, like, beautiful and she commands the room. The eye is drawn to her.
Yeah.
Whereas Lan
have
is
Lan,
huge,
who's, like, ugly.
he's
He's
big
like a slab of rock,
and demanding,
apparently.
but he's unobtrusive. He's constantly described as like, you know, somebody's paying attention to Moiraine, and then suddenly, like, when Moiraine walks away, Lan just appears and goes with her. And you know, and in the Stag and Lion, where Lan settles into such a profound stillness, leaning against the door to the dining room, that unless you were paying attention, you wouldn't even notice him.
Yeah.
And how you have this you know, dichotomy of the short woman who demands the eye and the huge dude who you don't even notice.
Yeah.
And I think that goes into one of his themes for the series, where he's, you know, obviously light and dark and male and female, and, you know, the duality of the entire thing. And how when you break that duality, like you do when you take away the male channelers, everything kind of goes off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's using them as like the perfect picture of this is what it should be.
Yes.
Like
this is
balance.
men and women working in
this
unison.
Is
this is what they can. Yes. Totally agree with that. That's exactly what Moiraine and Lan together represent when I read them. It's just it's awesome. And I appreciate these moments while I know that I have them, because going forward, of course, they don't exactly have a path that, you know, remains intertwined.
Yeah.
For much longer, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Are there any other characters we want to talk about before we...
I just had a bit about Min in terms of like Jordan's foreshadowing. And, you know, I just wanted to say that, like, the viewings that Min has are just, they're so chilling to read for anyone, which, as I assume, is most, who reads this with future context. It's downright chilling to see some of these things that were meant to happen, like, literally from the very beginning of what turned out to be a 14-volume and 23-year journey. Like, it was just incredible. I just wanted to give a quick shout-out to Jordan. Like, his ability in this is nothing short of astounding, and I don't think he has a peer in the entire landscape of epic fantasy. Go on.
If I'm not wrong, each one of her viewings we have an answer for. There's not...
There's a couple that were confusing to me.
There are a couple of them that we do not have answers for.
Okay, so for one, was it Tom Maryland? I think there's one with Tom that didn't make sense to me. Shit, I can't think of what it was. Sorry, go ahead. Do you know what they are, Drew? The ones that we don't specifically have answers for?
Oh, I think there was one with
there was one that I wanted to ask.
And a burning iron or something like that.
Yeah, with Rand, it was his bloody hand, white hot iron.
Well, except
a lot of people do assume that refers to him, you know, and Semirage, but the white hot iron doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
On that, there's.
It could be his sword,
like
the branding of the herons.
Maybe.
Or like him, like, forging his soul in pain like he does when he's at the very, very end and he just thinks he needs to be, like, Quain DR, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, let's see.
Okay,
Okay,
so it's food for thought, though.
I have the scene where Min tells Rand all the viewings. So, obviously, Lan, the Seven Ruined Towers, Babe in a Cradle holding the sword. We know those. The Gleeman is a man, not him, juggling fire, and the White Tower.
Yeah, man, not him juggling fire. I was like, who?
That's Owen.
That's Owen, yeah.
Owen.
Perrin, or a
nephew.
Wolf, a broken crown, and trees flowering all around him. And then, interestingly, the Red Eagle is for Matt, not Perrin.
Yeah, the Red Eagle, not the Red Hand. What the hell's up with that?
I think that's because Matt has the old blood, and he is
Netherin? Yeah.
So he's got like the memories of the Heart Guard captain.
Well, he is him.
Well, he is.
He's probably the reborn soul. And then there's the eye on the balance scale, obviously, a dagger with a ruby, a horn, and a laughing face. Those are all good. And then for Rand, it's the sword that isn't a sword, golden crown of laurel leaves, beggar's staff, pouring water on sand, a bloody hand, and a white hot iron. 3 women standing over a funeral bier with you on it, and black rock wet with blood. So the only one that I don't quite get there is the white hot iron.
Yeah, it's as like separate from the bloody hand.
The interesting thing, though, is
what is the beggar staff? Is that the staff that he has in?
Well, because he becomes a beggar, it's like the whole Fisher King symbology.
Okay.
But so the interesting thing is that as she's going through this, right, the actual punctuation of the sentence, there's a comma after sword that isn't a sword, so that's a discrete entity. Then there's a golden crown of laurel leaves, a beggar's staff, Rand pouring water on sand, and then as one item, a bloody hand and a white-hot iron.
Ah.
Yeah.
And that's why I just don't see...
Yeah, they're just the same... Yeah.
Because, like, his hand isn't bloody. His hand is burned off.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's cauterized. Yeah. So, I don't know. That one doesn't fully land with me there. I'm not entirely certain. Our listeners, if you have a better theory, let us know.
Yeah.
The sword and the heron branding still makes the most sense out of...
It could be. But...
If all our only two theories right now are him losing his hand and the branding on his palms, the branding stigmata-esque, makes more sense.
Jesus.
I also like at the end of this scene where, he says, "Did you see anything about rats or dreams?" And she says, "As for dreams, maybe it's your idea of a dream, but I never thought it was mine."
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah, that was pretty good.
So do we have any, kind of last thoughts about this
yes.
part? Okay, Lauren.
Okay. Narg. I have to bring up Narg.
Narg smart.
Narg smart.
Narg smart.
Narg smart. Narg stay. Yeah.
Murdral won't talk you. The only time I think we hear a Trolloc using the common speech.
Correct.
No.
Is it? What?
No,
They chant
at the end of Shadow Rising.
Yeah, Two Rivers.
I forgot about that.
They chant Isam's name.
Well,
that doesn't count.
But then it gets a name though.
Yeah, it is just a name, but
yeah.
In any case.
Okay, so can they have the ability and it's just difficult for them?
Well, I don't think
depending
all of them have
on
the ability. I think he was just because he was a wolf.
Yeah, well,
blend that he was probably just a little smarter than most.
Yeah, some of them have different mouths, different facial structures. I guess it's whatever they're given at birth and whatever intelligence they have. It's got to be a lucky combination, I assume.
And this ties in, this is something that gets mostly abandoned later in the series, but the Trolloc tribes.
Yeah.
Lan mentions the Davol several
Mm-hmm.
times, and in context, it makes it seem like they're the most dangerous.
Yeah.
And so it could be that, the tribes are, some have greater cunning or intelligence. And
Moiraine says 7 bands working together. We haven't seen anything like that since the Trolloc Wars,
Yeah.
But we never get any more bands later.
Yeah, I think the next time they're mentioned are, in A Memory of Light. And I think that was Brandon's.
No.
In Knife of Dreams, at least.
Knife of Dreams.
Yes. The attack on the manor house.
Yeah.
When Lews Therin takes over.
They mentioned the Trolloc tribes.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Because they say how many and which ones.
Interesting. Man, this tells you how long it's been. I haven't read Knife of Dreams since 2013.
Knife of Dreams for me has been a few years. Don't know if it's been that long, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a treat then, because...
I can't.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited.
I'm going to be on that episode of the podcast for sure.
A Memory of Light or Knife of Dreams?
Knife of Dreams.
Very well. I'll make sure you're on the schedule.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to that awesome scene we got in the Camelin Road. That the whole battle against the Trollocs with Moiraine wielding the Angreal and her staff, the walls of impenetrable fire, the earth rolling in waves, the sound of a struck gong, the image of the Myrddraal strolling in and to the fire, battling everybody. Such an incredible scene.
Super sick.
The flight from Shadar Logoth and everything that happens in the town there, the lore surrounding that. I mean, in the first half of the first book, Jordan gives us so much of this world that it's nothing short, as I said earlier, of just astounding. It's awesome. And I'm so excited that we're finally getting to talk about all of this stuff. We've been waiting for so long, Drew and I. I can't thank both of you enough for being on this episode. It's been awesome. What about you guys? How are you feeling the end of the first half of the Eye of the World?
So on that note, we do have a drag car, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I don't remember how much detail they go into about the drag car.
Not much.
Very little.
Do they tell you about the soul-sucking aspect of it?
No, we get that in the Shadow Rising.
We get that in the Great Hunt. when the drag car attacks Moiraine at Elias. And
oh yeah.
But Rob, did you know that Harry Potter, like the drag car, inspired, the what are they called?
Dementors.
The Dementors.
Do we know that they inspired the Dementors?
Yeah, didn't we? I saw that somewhere, right?
Like Rowling said they were inspired by drag car?
Yeah.
I've never heard this before.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but I've never heard it
It wouldn't
before.
surprise me either if Rowling was reading a lot of epic fantasy at the time.
So
Interesting. But no, I'm feeling good, feeling pumped to get into the rest of it.
Oh, it's gonna be so good.
yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I've read these, and this series means so much to me that it's beyond description going back into these books. I'm thrilled to be doing this. So
Here.
So let's move into the final draft.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rob, kick it off.
Okay. Well, I was simultaneously lazy, but I don't know, sentimental, if you want to call it that. Because I'm just drinking the exact same thing I was drinking last week, which is the lazy part. But at the same time, this is our 27th episode. We're finally beginning the Wheel of Time. I figured it was only appropriate to bring on exactly what I was drinking on the first episode, which is also on my 27th birthday. I'm still drinking the same bottle I had last week of the Glenfiddich, the single malt Scotch whiskey. They're 12-year age. So
Very
it's
nice.
Green bottle, moderately priced bottle of Scotch. Up here it's $60. But there's something about this particular Scotch that just has like this very, very fruity, smoky, spicy, still fruity though, blend that I just, I mix with just a splash of water, goes down so nice. It's just hands down my favorite my liquor. It's just a nice sipper, and I don't know. It's always a safe choice. There's never a negative moment I've had with it.
Fair enough. Pat?
I enjoyed an agave wheat beer from Breckenridge Brewing in Colorado. It was fairly unassuming, but nice. Wish I had more of it. Wish I had something to relate to the eye of the world.
Yeah. Well, I think Lauren's got something over here.
Oh yeah. So I'm drinking Wheels Goes Around. And it
What? Hold on. Say that again. Wheel goes around?
Yeah, it's a goza. So Wheels Goes Around.
Oh my god.
I had
That's
to.
awesome.
It's a triple pun.
Damn
no,
it,
actually,
that's
it's a
awesome.
quadruple pun. Excuse me.
pretty
I'll
bad.
continue because it's.
So it's from Hand Brewing, which, by the way, Rob,
Left hand.
you see it's a red
See-
hand.
I see it. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay, so
if you're
how did Drew let you have that beer is what I want to know.
Yeah.
if you're in like the Wheel of Time Facebook group, you've probably seen Left Hand Brewing Company posted many times. Their logo is a red hand on a white circle for obvious Wheel of Time
Holy
connection
crap.
reasons. A couple of years back, I organized like a Colorado Wheel of Time fan meetup, and we met at Left Hand Brewing Company. It's sort of the unofficial mascot of
That's
Wheel of
awesome.
Time Watt fans. But yeah, so I am drinking today a Burgundy sour ale aged in oak barrels with raspberries from Crooked Stave. They're another Colorado brewing company, Crooked Stave Artisan Beer Project. They do a lot of like barrel aged stuff, a lot of sours. But this beer is called Origins. And I feel like
Very nice.
that's all I need to say about that name. The beer itself is super good. So this was what we were all like oohing and ahhing over early in the episode.
You were
I
passing
let
around earlier.
Lauren and Pat try it. It's
So good.
phenomenal. This is a great sour. I mean, it is tart. You got a lot of that raspberry. You got a lot of that wood barrel in there. I mean, it's just delicious though. This is
Here.
extremely flavorful.
Dang, this sounds good.
Yeah. We, it's gonna be some work cut out for us to keep going with the themed beers through all
I
of these
tried
Wheel of
this
Time
week,
books.
and I actually bought my beer already for the next week, but it's not like super thematically appropriate. It's just like, meh. Haha, kinda.
All right. Yeah.
But I mean, I've got it. It's actually right here next to me. I'm not gonna say shit. Sorry.
But yeah, so I think, that's a wrap for episode 27 of Inking Out Loud.
27
next up,
episodes.
Obviously, we're going to be finishing up Eye of the World. And we're going to have the same lineup for that one. We'll have Lauren and Pat back on that.
Sweet.
As always, take a look at our Patreon. If you want early access to these Wheel of Time episodes, you can get that there. We will be doing Strike at Shale Ghoul as our next short
I forgot about that.
Patreon
I just got so much more
episode.
excited.
So, check that out. We will, down the line, obviously, we'll also be doing River of Souls and, what is it? A Fire in the Ways. The brand new non-canon Memory of Light deleted scene.
Neither of which I've read.
Yeah, so we got some fun stuff on Patreon. Check us out. That support allows us to pay Pat and pay Danny, our artist, and pay for our hosting for the podcast so we can keep doing this. And as always, I'm your host, Drew McCaffrey. With me is my co-host, Rob Santos.
Yep.
And our special guests, Lauren and Patrick McCaffrey.
Who's riding once again on the winds of time.
Yes.
Very nice. So, we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Later.
Goodbye.